Greetings and welcome to this catch-up. And I don't know if you can probably notice here, but there's nobody next to me, which is a bit unusual, yeah? So I'm trying some different things out here. I really wanted to try and do some more vCatchups and get a broader range of people. And so instead of waiting for those people to come to Australia or for me traveling a long distance to see them, I'm going to use the modern technology ideas of, I think we're on Google Hangout for this one, so we're going to try that one and we'll see how we go. Ultimately, these podcasts or vCatchups get uploaded to YouTube anyway, so I kind of figured this would be the best way. So let's see how we go. So I've got a really interesting guest with me today, and special guest, if you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be really good.
Hey Craig, how's it going? Thanks very much for having me on. My name's Rene Van Den Bedem. I'm an enterprise architect and strategist. I blog at vcdx133.com and I'm on Twitter at vcdx133 as well. I'm currently working as a chief architect at a Saudi telecom company in Saudi Arabia, and I'm having some interesting times there. I've been there for 6 weeks now, so it's been fun so far.
Wow, 6 weeks, yeah. I mean, that's pretty. That's a short space of time to join a new company. That is, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got like the usual like 5 or 6 questions, Renee. And look, I just wanted to like start off by just talking about the fact that look, I met you at VMworld this year, a couple of months back now for the first time, and I was kind of really surprised. I think what happened was I heard you on the VMTN Roundtable podcast. And I thought, that guy's got an Aussie accent. And I kind of like worked out then that, you're actually based in the Middle East and stuff. And so I kind of thought, it'd be really good to interview you, like at least then I'm carrying on this theme of like either talking to Aussies or talking to people who are in Australia or from Australia, that sort of thing. So, you mentioned the chief architect role at a telco. Do you want to give us just a little bit of background as to how you ended up there today? I know it's kind of like a life story thing, but like just more around, what it actually entails to be a chief architect at a telco, but how you actually got there at this point in time.
Yeah. So I was working previously at a financial organisation by the name of Bank Al Balad in Saudi Arabia. So there I spent 5 years transforming their enterprise from legacy, monolithic, vertically scaled infrastructure running on non-x86 hardware to completely with vSphere and VCOps and the whole VMware, moving towards the VMware software-defined data center. So that's become basically a cornerstone case within the Saudi market. We were basically one of the first organizations to do that. So I was headhunted from Bank Al Balad to SDC because they are having the exact same problems that Bank Al Balad was having 5 years ago. So I'm there to develop the 5-year strategy and then work with them to take that through to the full software-defined data center over 5 to 10 years, however long it takes. So they're obviously moving from a medium-sized bank to the largest service provider in the Middle East is obviously many orders of magnitude more difficult. We have the problem of scale and making sure that we can implement very large projects and transformations within a reasonable amount of time. So that's something that I'm trying to get my head around at the moment. So that's the biggest challenge to what I'm doing at the moment. So I suppose the other thing that really created this move was obviously I got my vCDX earlier this year, and part of the vCDX process I thought there was not enough information out there on how to work with the vCDX, what you need to do, what types of documents you need to be producing, that kind of stuff. So when I got it, I promised myself that I'd at least start a blog series and just talk about the types of documents and shed a bit more light onto the whole vCDX process. And there, blogging just caught on for me, and then I started a few podcasts as a guest, and it just evolved from there. It's been an organic growth, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean that's I mean, just to give us some insight, what is it kind of like working in the Middle East compared to a Western country? I mean, what kind of
Yeah.
what,
Challenges? Yes.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
so I'm speaking very generally now. See, in the Middle East, budget is not normally an issue. We have loads of budget. Wherever you work, whatever the budget you need to implement, you'll get the budget as long as you justify it. Technology is not an issue. We have representatives from all the biggest companies around the planet within the Middle East, and they have good sales organisations and support organisations in place. The biggest problem is people and process,
right,
just bad implementations and bad designs, and just getting things done in a timely fashion. Because what tends to happen is you will sign up with a particular technology, and that will be implemented, and then the vendor will normally withdraw. They may provide resident engineering services or whatever, but the knowledge transfer into the organisation tends to be the toughest, and also to have proper service management processes in place so that you can actually operate efficiently as an organisation delivering services to your customers. So people and process is the biggest issue, and this is the thing we always struggle with. And when you find experts, particularly Westerners, they will normally last 2 years in the Middle East, and then they'll go back to their home country. So you have a very high changeover of staff.
wow, yeah, some very different challenges, I guess, than what we get in other parts of the world. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, I noticed I did a bit of research on you before, and I noticed that you're kind of very network focused, your background originally, and I was kind of wondering, you mentioned you've got your VCDX. How's it been for you transitioning out? I mean, you're never going to stop doing networking. It's kind of like the glue for everything.
Yeah.
But like, how it's affected you now moving into doing like compute and obviously storage as well.
Yeah. So my background, I started in the telecommunications market for access and optical networking equipment, so SDH, WDM, ISDN, BRI, PRI, that kind of stuff. So I worked in the telecom space until 2002, and then from there through network management of telecoms infrastructure, I kind of moved into the enterprise space for routing and switching and that kind of stuff. So for the past 10 years, I was basically focusing on the networking and security component of the enterprise, and then working as an architect when I started this IT transformation thing with Bank Oberlin, my previous employer. I had to learn about compute and storage and virtualization, in particular vSphere, as a matter of necessity. So it was basically just jumping in the deep end and being the owner of this transformation effort, because someone has to own it. You need a technical champion, and I just had to learn on the fly. And it was just through reading blogs. I didn't do my first VMware training course until the end of 2012. So before that, it was all just blogs. So obviously, Duncan Eppings, Yellow Brick Road, Frank Denneman, and Scott Lowe, Chris Wall, all those blogs were what I was reading to try and learn about, okay, how am I going to design our next generation of private cloud platforms. And then from there, once I did the training, I was just trying to set the example for my guys. I said, okay, at least at the end of all of this vSphere training, we should all be VCP certified as a minimum. So I went ahead and did that, and I thought, okay, let's give the vCaps a go. Gave that a shot, got through, and I thought, okay, I was designing my third iteration of the private cloud for Bank Oberlin, and I thought, okay, let's see if the design is VCDX ready. And so I defended in Barcelona last year at VMworld, and I failed. And I just realised how many holes I had in my game as an enterprise architect. I thought I was an enterprise architect. I wasn't. And there was 5 months of just study and just learning and onboarding information to get to the VCDX level. And it was hard. It was tough. But I'm so glad I did it. And it's about... This is a classic statement for the VCDX, right? It's not about the VCDX, it's about the journey, and that's true, right? But I must say, getting the VCDX at the end of it is a serious achievement, because when I got it, I couldn't keep a smile off. I was smiling for like 6 days. I was so happy.
Yeah.
It was just such a long, hard road.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's a really good story. Yeah. I mean, not to compare, but I actually did my DCA exam yesterday and passed yesterday, and I mean, that's like a lot simpler process. I mean, it's still like 6 or 8 weeks of study, but just to get through 6 or 8 weeks and just to have it on that day and go through that lab process, it's pretty fulfilling when you come out there and find out that you've done something. It makes it all worthwhile. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going down that journey as well, mate. But I'm not sure I'll be able to do it within the same time frame as yourself. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah. It's.
I saw your announcements on Twitter. I saw your announcements on Twitter. Congrats on that. And that's just it's step by step, and you need to think of it as a marathon. And you will come up with a project that will be vCDX compliant. You may have to add a small amount of fictitious design elements to make sure you meet the blueprint. But it'll come to you at the right time, and you'll go, okay, let's do it. Let's try it. And the hardest thing is the paperwork, getting your design ready. Once you've got your design ready and the submission, even if you fail, the next time you resubmit, you already have a design. You just need to fix whatever the issues were from a panelist perspective. And then the second time is actually a lot easier because it's more about focusing on your skills, not on the paper design that you submitted.
Yeah, some good advice there. Thanks, Rene. So the next question, I mean, just leading on to that, obviously vCDX 133, like since you've got that certification, you've kind of mentioned it a little bit before, there's been a lot of focus for you on that community payback, and I think, this is a lot of stuff that gets talked about in the industry at the moment, and I think that's a great thing, and I think we're all part of this community, everyone knows I wave a big flag about this whole thing, but, we're all part of this community and about sharing our experiences. Our journey is really important, where you are today, yeah, with the vCDX, we always talk about the journey getting there, but what about now you've got there? You talked about the transformation stuff and documenting the vCDX to a great degree, but where is it taking you, I guess? Where have the fruits taken you?
Yep. So for me, it's like night and day. I look at pre-vCDX, post-vCDX, and one of the things I wish I had have done was started blogging and being a part of the V community years ago. Like 2-3 years ago, I really should have been a part of it. I waited until I had the vCDX before I started blogging because I just wanted to shed light on the vCDX process and what you need to do to actually get there. So I wish I had have started earlier. But now that I'm doing it and I've presented at VMworld and podcasting with you, the great thing about the V community is that now I know who the top guys are in the world for the different technologies. Like, for instance, part of my 5-year strategy, I'm investigating OpenStack at Saudi Telecom Company. So I'm reading about it, trying to find out about it, and then I thought, Eric Wright, Disco Posse.
Yep.
He's just been in Paris for the OpenStack Summit, so I just reached out to him. We had a quick hangout the other day, and to save me days of reading and digging for information, 20-minute discussion with him gave me the lowdown, It just makes such a difference. And anyone who wants help from my areas of expertise, just reach out to me to Twitter, and I'll give you the lowdown on what you need to do, from an architectural and a strategy perspective for enterprise and for service provider, And that connection is what it's all about. Just a tight community. It's not about egos. It's about sharing knowledge and bettering yourself. And we all know that you can be an expert in your area, but to know everything in the information and technology area and also in the service provider space, forget about it. No one can be an expert in everything. So we have to collaborate together to share knowledge. And blogging and podcasting and attending community events and working in the VMUG, that's all a part of that, And there's no way to survive if you don't do it. If you want to be the best that you can be, you need to be a part of the community. Right, and from a technology perspective, you really need to target to try to be an enterprise architect and an enterprise strategist, an enterprise administrator and an enterprise operator. You need to be able to work across every single silo. And that's the message that's the transformation that's happening at the moment with the software-defined data center. If you think that you can survive just being in the server space or in the storage space or the network space, you're going to, in 3 or 4 years' time, you're going to be putting yourself out of a job and capping your capabilities and capping your saleability in the market. You know, you need to move out of the silos. It's so important, and vCommunity is a big part of that.
Yeah, no, that's some really, really good advice there, Rene. I think you know, like that. I mean, that's kind of why I find myself in the vendor space today. You know, for those kind of exact reasons. I think the writing's on the wall. I guess, you know, for where you are in the world, I guess, you know, the whole SDDC story is actually, you know, a benefit because it's about, you know, okay, you need skills to actually go and build that environment, but then actually the skills that are required to then ongo and manage and maintain it are actually quite minimal.
Yes, absolutely. So obviously, the service catalog is the most important thing. You want to just have a list of services that you're delivering to your customer, and then you want to link the policies from a compute network storage, pardon me, and security perspective to that. And then automation and orchestration, excuse me.
That's all right.
Is so important.
Yeah, no, some good yeah. Yeah, no. Look, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was, yeah, have a drink, man. Take a minute for a drink. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the whole, you know, obviously where I am today, I'm kind of involved quite a lot with flash technologies. Yeah, a couple of weeks back, I had the fortune to go to a flash manufacturing facility, and it was in downtown California, which I thought was a really strange place to have one. But yeah, so I guess on that, you know, I wanted to just ask you a bit about that whole technology. Like, so, you know, I think flash is just becoming such a big disruptor in the storage industry today. You know, you look at, you know, going to VMworld, even vForum in Australia. You know, you look at the Solutions Exchange there, and there's a ton of new storage vendors providing technologies all based around, you know, the capabilities of flash and you know, obviously the software-defined side of it as well. But you know, what impact, you know, in your belief, you know, obviously as a VCDX, what impact do you think that has on the data center design? Because I mean, you know, really, you know, that we're on this tipping point of mass adoption of flash, and I guess I'm just really interested in, from your perspective, how it's going to change the way you architect your data center of the future.
Yep. So for me, obviously, yeah, flash is the future, without a doubt. Obviously, for server-side flash acceleration and also just having all flash bricks within your data center, it's very important. I see it really has a future when it's coupled with hyper-converged converged infrastructure. So within my 5-year strategy, obviously flash is a very big part of my strategy, but with hyper-converged and converged infrastructure, it's even more important because I want to have pre-configured blocks of compute network and storage infrastructure that I can just move into my data center as a predefined Lego block. Mm. And the more that I push onto the vendor from a support, design, test, and implementation perspective, the easier it is for me to achieve my business goals. So a big part of that is pre-purchasing or purchasing in advance the infrastructure that I need for the next 6 months or the next year. From a capacity planning perspective, when we hit 70% utilization of performance or capacity, we buy the next set of, or the next expansion of infrastructure. And also to move away from our design teams internally from having to design monolithic infrastructure to bolt compute network and storage infrastructure together. You have to completely move away from that. you know, because it slows the process down. It makes you less agile.
I think there's always a need for hardware, but I think the emphasis is more about what's being built on it and how it's being utilized in your design, and how you're using that layer to then build services on top of them. I mean, you use the classic phrase, the service catalog, which I think is kind of really important. Is knowing what you're going to deliver and then having that foundation to deliver it on. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, again, with the whole software-defined stuff, VMware have been touting it for a few years now, but I think the automation is really coming to a point now where it's adding a lot of value in business. And I mean, it was a good example you said there before, about if it's challenging to find the right skill set in a demographic, then something like automation, you can actually come along and get your elite team to put it into place, and then it kind of alleviates that that gap of skills that's required. We kind of talked a little bit off before, but I kind of wanted to raise the point as well, was around the whole the concept of this pre-packaged solution, and I think that kind of like talks a bit about what you're talking about there, about this transformation project that you're doing, where you're actually consuming components like more integrated. So I mean, that whole I want compute, storage, and networking, but then I want it in a fashion that I can just add it as a building block. Do you think that's kind of a trend that we're going to see more of then?
I think for sure. It depends which industry you're in. Like for instance, if you're in academia, academia is very happy to go ahead and develop their own stuff and maintain their own skill sets within house. Go with open source. Go with like open compute hardware. They're very happy to do that kind of stuff. But if you're in the private enterprise, where you have a company or you're a telco and you're delivering service to your customers, and you're trying to maintain the most efficient and agile model possible, I think this is the way to go. I can see it's just happening more, and there's a very good reason why VTE are the leader in converged infrastructure at the moment. And obviously, for hyper-converged infrastructure, Nutanix and SimpliVity are very popular. And obviously, VMware's investment in Evo Rail and Evo Rack is also indicative of where we're all heading. We want our hardware and our infrastructure to be easier to implement. It doesn't have to be that difficult, And hyper-converged and converged infrastructure is proving that,
So you'd, I've been asking this question a bit. So for you, if you were given the choice of, an integrated stack that provides, good enough integration for services, for example, let's say, like replication or, different components, as opposed to, having separate bespoke pieces of hardware or pieces of software that that are best of breed for a specific task. Which kind of which side would you edge against, or for?
So as long as the predefined stack met my business requirements from a performance, capacity, and scalability perspective, I would go with the predefined stack every time, for sure, because the operational savings down the line are monumental, And if you have your competition, they're adopting the same and they're delivering their services to market at a fraction of your cost, then if you think over 5 to 10 years, they're going to, in terms of a price war, you're going to lose. You have to compete. You have to be the most efficient possible.
Yeah, and I guess we've had a big discussion here about internal IT, but I guess what we should also then consider is the adoption of cloud as well, and that their outsourcing of those services as well, which may not like as a working for a telco, it's probably a bit different, but for a lot of businesses, then not only have you got to compete internally for cost, but you actually got to compete compared to what cloud can offer as a service as well.
Yeah, agreed. Obviously, with public cloud and adopting a hybrid cloud methodology, you've got other like compliance and data sovereignty is also a big thing. But if your cloud providers can do it cheaper than you can do it yourself, and this is particularly true for small, medium business, then you would be crazy not to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting
Like for me,
in our industry, you know. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So for me, just a case in point, when I was at my previous job, our exchange solution, so we're running Exchange 2010, is something that was very difficult to manage. So one of the things that really did make sense from a business and a process perspective was to partner with Microsoft Azure and use their Exchange Online product. Yeah, so that was something that I was pushing that before I left. It just made so much sense. You had pretty much unlimited mailbox storage. It was like a crazy number. I mean, it was like 5 tera or 10 tera per person. Full archiving solution in there. It means that if you have problems with your internet connections, you would still be able to provide a mail service to your employees. The only downside of that is that you really need to look at the bandwidth considerations for if you're using Outlook clients within your organization, because you would then be connecting over the internet or a leased line to Azure. You just need to make sure that you have the right bandwidth and you understand how much that's going to cost you. And as long as you weigh that up and it makes sense, then it's something that you do need to seriously consider.
Yeah, no. It's interesting. Like I say, it's a great time to be in IT. There's a lot of really interesting plays going on at the moment. Yeah. So, just wanted to jump to the next question. So, I kind of always ask this. So, tell me about your home lab, Rene. So, tell me how you get your hands on the tools. Yeah.
Yep. So previous to VCDX, it was all just through my work lab wherever I was working. But I now have baby dragon triplet. So I've got a blog post on my blog at vcdx133.com. If you click on the labs tab, it's all listed there. But I basically have 3 baby dragons that are running with vSAN, vSphere 5.5, and I use that as a management pod. And then all of the different technologies that I'm testing and trialing, I use nested ESXi. So I keep my management pod intact. I don't play with that at all, and I just have a nested environment for whatever I'm testing, whether it's NSX or VCOps or VCAC or VCD or whatever.
Yeah, the power of nested ESXi. Eh? I think it's.
It makes such a difference because then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can trash it, start again, and of course you've got Auto Lab. This is also something that you can use if you're doing it on your laptop. You know, that's also a great tool. So the guys did an excellent job on that. Demitas, yeah.
Yeah, Alistair Cook and Nick Marshall, yeah. Yeah, good guys, yeah. Yeah, so, I was going to say on that, I did my DCA using Auto Lab, and I think that was kind of the great thing is having it on a laptop and you could just take it anywhere. You had it on a plane, you had it in the, in the office, you had it like, in the hotels, wherever. And that was kind of like gold for me because I could just at any point I could say, right, I'm going to have 20 minutes on the lab and I'm going to try this out and so on. So yeah, really.
So if you're using Auto Lab on your laptop, what have you got? You must have pretty high spec because you would have been using this.
I've got a MacBook Pro, but it's only got 8 gig of RAM. So only got 8 gig of RAM. It's funny, isn't it, for a laptop these days? But no, it's not huge. Yeah, it's not a load. But I think the great thing, the key thing was really with how VMware Fusion works because the power saving integration is just amazing. So you can just pop the lid down and everything suspends and I think that was kind of one of the biggest things was that anywhere I could go, I could just boot up. They were all constantly running in the background. They'd just suspend, and then when I wanted to just get on the VC, it'd be on the vCenter server. I'd just jump on there and it recover and go, carry on. No blue screens, nothing. No purple screens, anything, which I thought was pretty amazing, really.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem I always found was that. You'd spend like a long time building the lab, and then, then you're having to maintain it as well. And then, I always remember I used to have some physical equipment at home, and it'd be like, oh, I'm going to start the lab up, so I'd spend like 20 minutes trying to like power everything on. Yeah, it's a lot better with Auto Lab on a laptop. Yeah, I have to say. So yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, like you talk about nested there a lot. I mean, do you do you find like are you concerned about not having hands-on with like specific hardware products and stuff? Are you like, I mean, I guess you do it as part of your day job anyway, but I mean, is that a problem for you that it is all abstracted through a consumer device or?
So obviously when it comes to performance testing and scale, obviously there's no substitute for the actual equipment that you have in your data center. So that's what I do at work. You're right. That's my day job. As far as the software-defined data center goes, that's the beauty of the software-defined data center. You can do it in your home lab on your laptop, not a problem. And because it's all of what used to be hardware functionality is now being abstracted as software, it means that there is no excuse for anyone who's interested in this technology that they cannot just do it at home. Really, it's an enabler for education as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. So, last question, man. Back to some looking about what some of the stuff you've done. But I noticed before, you worked in like quite a few different industries. Finance, academia, vendor space, telecommunications. What can you give us some insight into the differences of working in those verticals and how that's, how that's kind of like molded like who you are today as far as the kind of work that you're doing now? Because obviously they're quite diverse industries, that you've worked in.
Yeah, so you're right. Working in so many different areas has really developed me. It's forced me to grow, and it's made me a better enterprise architect and a strategist. Pardon me. So obviously, within finance is very cost conscious, and also very compliance and governance focused. Because if you work for a bank, you'll be going through 3 or 4 audits per year, right? So they're very security conscious and very compliance conscious, and also you have to follow the regulations of the central bank of whatever country that you're banking in, and also, like for instance, maintaining a business relationship with Visa or MasterCard, you need to be PCI compliant, all that kind of stuff. So very, very highly compliance and audit focused. Academia is basically the opposite of that. They're very happy to be open as much as possible. One university that I worked for in Australia in 2002, 2003, we didn't even have firewalls. Like, it was not considered a need. University needs to be open, right? Don't need to worry about security.
Yeah, I've been in that situation, where we had desktops with public IP addresses. I thought that was pretty funny scenario. Yeah,
exactly. These guys had 2 Class B networks, public network addresses. Every device in the organisation had a public IP address, like just unheard of. But in academia, that's normal. That's what they do. That's how they roll. I think that's changed now. I hope that's changed now. But but yeah, they love developing. They love open source. That's academia for you. They're really into homegrown and maintaining and managing it themselves. And you have pros and cons with all of that. It gives you a lower, you're not paying so many fees to vendors for licensing and whatnot, but you need to maintain that core skill set within your company and have the knowledge transfer to make sure that you can continue supporting those products. Telecommunications, I suppose the biggest thing I can say there is that cost really, they have loads of budget, but they want the most efficient use of budget because of scale. So they're the more reusable and repeatable architectures and designs that you have, the better off you'll be. And scale is the biggest thing with telecommunications. Like, how can you design something to scale across 2 or 3 million customers or more? And my experience with working in the vendor workspace, I used to work for Fujitsu and Lucent and Alcatel and Marconi. So there, it depends on which vendor you work for, but I found that there's basically 2 types, and it depends on the people that are working there. So you have the the vendors that are interested in just selling you a solution and then go interested in the deal to get the money. And then you have other vendors who are interested in a partnership, and they're interested in enabling you. They don't want to sell you something that you don't need. They want to sell you solutions that actually meet your business requirements and will enable you to become a more successful company. So that's it in the nutshell. What I've seen from my experiences in working across different spaces within the companies of the world.
Yes, some interesting stuff there. I mean, do you think that, just finishing on that, the last bit that you said there, do you think then that can be some advantages of looking at like startup vendors, versus like your traditional, tier one vendors that you see today? Do you think that's some of the benefits that a startup could bring over some companies' current incumbent?
For sure, absolutely. I think the trick with the startup is if you have a founder who has the right ethos and the right mentality and the right way of doing things from day one, they can very quickly scale into a company that you as a customer would want to do business with. The only problem with the startup is scale. If you're on the other side of the planet, then it becomes very difficult to do business with a startup, because how are you going to get the support and the skills that you need to survive as a company, just to support their infrastructure or their solution, whatever it may be. But you're right. The right startups can, and if you have an established incumbent company that is very stagnant and set in their ways, then you're right. It's very easy it's like a David and Goliath story, isn't it? It's very, very easy to turn the tables, And I suppose over the last 30 years, there's a large number of cases where the giant fell and the startup became a big company and evolved and became a massive success. Just look at Cisco, look at VMware, Google's another big one, Facebook. Yeah, the world's full of those stories.
Interesting. All right, Rene, thanks for coming on the vCatchup. I really appreciate you trying to Google Hangout and seeing where we go. I don't know if there's any last things you want to say. Maybe talk about your blog or something like that, or.
Yeah. So first, thanks very much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure having a chat. We only met at VMworld recently, but yeah, it's been really cool. So I blog at vcdx133.com, and I'm on Twitter at vcdx133. I'm doing a lot of VCDX mentoring at the moment, so if anyone needs help, just reach out. My technology expertise is basically the VCE technology stack, so if you've got any questions or need a download or a brain dump on what's going on there, you need help, just please reach out to me, and if I have time, I'll give you a hand. Not a problem.
Awesome. Thanks, Rene. Thanks a lot, man. Speak to you soon, yeah.
Okay. Cheers.